innovation economy? We are engaging corporations, nonprofits, government agencies, universities, entrepreneurs, and you. We are bringing forward 5 future-defining topics: innovation, partnership, sustainability, resilience, and inclusiveness. With each topic, we are bringing forward new ideas, sharing insights, and driving change. Join global leaders and us on June 30th to frame the future of innovation. Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils, GFCC.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Roberto Alvarez. I'm the Executive Director of the GFCC. Thank you so much for being here today. The GFCC, it's a global multi-stakeholder organization combining our members and fellows. We have a footprint in 30 countries, and it's great to have you here together with us. We are having today the second of our Frame the Future conversations. So welcome. And today we're talking innovation. Through the Frame the Future series, we want to really explore how 5 future defining topics: innovation, sustainability, resilience, inclusiveness, and partnership can be weaved into future competitiveness and growth strategies. So thanks for joining. We have an amazing session today with colleagues coming from different parts of the globe. So as I said, the whole conversation really is about how, and we have an overlap here. We're using those 5 future defining elements to have a look at different competitiveness strategy, decision areas, talent development, infrastructure, intellectual property, and innovation policy. And we are exactly getting started with innovation policy here today. So we want to hear from our colleagues about how they're driving innovation on the ground in Saudi Arabia, in Japan, in Chile, in the United States, in Australia, and across the globe. So thanks for being here today. We have 3 main questions for our conversation. And the first one really is about how can we weave those elements in innovation policies, strategies, and initiatives, and how we can drive sustainability, resilience, inclusiveness, and partnership through innovation. The second really is about what works in practice, what's being done, what are they doing, what we can learn from that. So what are the cases, examples, and best practices that they can share? And we will build from there and see how the GFCC community can engage more in the innovation space with all of you. I will be very brief in introducing our speakers here today, but I really want to invite everybody to join the conversation at any point. Please use the Q&A. Please use the chat if you want to share a resource, if you want to share a case, and if you want to share something else here. But just to get it started, we have Ghada Aldaban. She comes from Saudi Arabia. Ghada is the head of the Omnipreneurship Lab for the Aldaban Group. Great to have you here, Ghada. We have Jaime Alvarez from Chile. Jaime is the head of foresight for the Chilean National Innovation Council for Development, with a background in business and consultancy. Jaime now leads Sdgs initiative related to foresight. Thank you for being here, Jaime. Joining us from the United States, maybe from New York City or from Boston or the Boston area, we have Bill Lees. Bill is a venture capitalist. Around 20 years ago, he founded Bremer Energy Ventures and has been investing at the intersections of sustainable technologies, new energy, advanced materials, and building the future. So Bill, thanks a lot for being here. From Japan, we have Hiro Nishiguchi, our board member. Hiro is the CEO of the Japan Innovation Network, which is a platform that gathers corporate Japan, several corporations from Japan and public sector really working to drive innovation through new innovation frameworks and connecting corporations with startups, driving advancement of innovation ecosystems. And from Australia, we have Ken Sloan. Ken is the Deputy Vice Chancellor, the Vice President for Industry at Monash University. Monash is one of the leading universities in Australia and in the globe. It's great to have you here, Ken, not just because you are joining us from Australia, and thanks for doing that because it's super late there, I know that, but also because Monash has a global footprint, and I also know that you have news about your future steps. And so we hope to continue engaged and working with you in the GFCC as you move to a different position shortly. So our conversation here today, I will really get it started introducing the session as I did, and we will hear from each one of our guests, and then once again invite all of you to start to share questions on the Q&A. We'll get started with Hiro, who will set the stage. Hiro, so if you could do that, it would be wonderful. We will take questions. Once again, I want to remind you that we want to collect some cases, ideas, and things that you are doing on the ground. So please feel free to do that if you are attending this session. Finally, please don't forget, we are tweeting about the session. The GFCC Twitter handle is @DGFCC, and we are using the hashtag #FrameTheFuture. So really, for us to get started, I want to turn to you, Hiro, and thank you so much for joining us late. I know it's late night in Tokyo. Over to you, Hiro.
Okay, Roberto, thank you very much for your kind introduction, and also my fellow panelists tonight, and let us enjoy this moment together. Roberto, I should, is it my introduction or to setting a tone message?
Please tell us a bit about what you are doing and help us to set the stage for this conversation and how we can drive sustainability and resilience through innovation. We would love to hear about what you are doing.
Okay, great. Again, thank you very much. I'm a co-founder and the CEO of Japan Innovation Network, and we call it GIN. And GIN is a non-profit innovation accelerator and targeting a large organization's internal innovation activities. And we've been working very closely with the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, and because they do have wonderful programs around the globe called Accelerator Labs. And also we've been representing Japan in developing the global standard for innovation management system, which is called ISO 56002. The standard was published in 2019 after 6 years' work of among 59 countries together. And again, we've been representing Japan in developing and publishing the standards globally. And I think these issues are all connected. And it is often very easy for us to mix two words, invention and innovation. They are totally different, I have to say. Invention, according to the ISO standard definition, is a new entity. Invention is a value creation. Sometimes invention can create a value, but sometimes it doesn't. And so oftentimes we tend to think that let us do some invention. Great, invention is great. However, what we are really looking for is innovation and value creation. Then what is a value creation? It is a shift of customer experiences. And customer could be government, could be corporate, or citizens. We do have all the kind of customers on this planet. And then let me connect this with SDGs, or global goals. SDGs is a list of expected shift of customer experiences in all countries and in all segments. And we say that we don't want to leave nobody. We'd like to leave nobody behind, of course, but saying so is so easy, but actually, how do we do it, and how, and what, where? These are so important in terms of achieving SDGs, but also SDGs is such a high goals to achieve, and it does require massive collaboration among sectors, countries, regions, and corporate, social sectors, everybody. And so it requires a teamwork. And to do so, we need a common language, common framework. And we use innovation management system as a common language and to achieve SDGs. And let me finish by stating what we are doing. We are working with the UNDP and through Japan Innovation Challenge Contest, which is funded by Japanese government, the Cabinet Office. And we've been working with 5 countries and 5 accelerator labs. And maybe we can talk about details later. Then they have identified, the United Nations has identified problems in the field. Then they invited large organizations to provide solutions. However, it's not about invention matching. It is really about business model creation and the business model validation. To do so, in doing so, we have adopted this ISO standard 56002 as a common framework for us to work together. And so again, I think SDG is a list of expected customer experiences, and then we need innovation thinking. And also by knowing so well that invention and innovations are different animals. Okay, I stop here. Over to you, Roberto.
Thank you so much. And I believe that everybody here is interested in hearing from you in a few minutes. Well, what are those 5 countries and how you are actually engaging on the ground? But we'll have a chance to talk a bit about that. I just want to highlight 2 things that you mentioned. This notion that ideas matter in the sense that understanding the innovation concept is very important, but also that we need practical frameworks to address like overarching ideas like the SDGs. So thanks for bringing that, and we will be back to those topics. We have several colleagues joining us from around the globe, so thanks for doing that. Tajuddin from Malaysia, Mary from the United States, Bethesda. We have, let's say, colleagues from, as I said, Malaysia, but also Indonesia, Greece. Thanks for being here, Panos. It's wonderful to have you. Bill, I want to turn to you because also for your introduction, as I said, you've been for several years ahead of the pack, really allocating capital to drive growth and build new sustainable, innovative businesses. And I think you are really at the, let's say, the implementation level. So if you could share a bit what you are doing and what do you see that's needed to make more of that happen? Bill, over to you. I
was mute. I muted myself. Apologies to everyone. So no, thank you to GFCC, and Roberto, thank you for the kind introduction. Braemar Energy Ventures, of which I'm a co-founding partner, was founded just under 20 years ago to focus on energy technology. And today, it can be viewed more as the energy transition as we look to what we can do to change our energy scenarios so that we'll have obviously reduced impact on the climate and bring new innovation and in the concept of innovation, more functionality, better quality of life, things that I think all of us care about. But getting to the trenches in the earliest gestation in the early 2000s, when I first got into this space as a venture capital investor, it was sort of viewed as an underutilized space. I mean, biotech, IT, and some of the more traditional venture capital investing focuses were well underway, had proven themselves, had gotten to scale, and of course had transformational effects on our lives, and that continues to do so. But energy was kind of sluggish in that regard because the markets didn't innovate that quickly. There was maybe some invention, as Hiro was saying, but a lot of that invention didn't make it to the marketplace. So in concept of innovation, of actually incorporating and scaling the technologies to become a major impact on the globe, and quite frankly, to be profitable for the investors was really, at its beginning still. where we are today and where I invest across 4 different areas. I invest clean transportation, power, resources management, and infratech. Each of those buckets has a major energy implication towards both innovation as well as towards societal needs, including and most notably greenhouse gas concerns. So the biggest challenge in what I've been working on for the last almost 20 years is how to identify the right teams with the right technologies that are there at the right time with the right policy making, right regulatory regime. All these things are very difficult to anticipate. And up until really the last 2 or 3 years, had a lot of headwinds. So, and while we certainly had some successes over the last 20 years, relative to some less regulated markets and markets that accepted innovation and change more quickly, we were in a place where we kind of always had to kind of fight our way up to show that we were really part of the venture model. That has significantly changed over the last couple of years, in particular, because of the extraordinary emphasis on globally on how we're going to deal with climate change. And that has become such an enormous impetus to helping innovation in the form of all the right forces coming together at a pivotal time. And I think maybe part of the conversation today will be, even with all these sort of forces coming together, what kind of time do we have in terms of making sure that innovation can reach the global community in a way that's going to address this extraordinary challenge that we have between now and mid-century. So I'm happy to get into more details later, but I just wanted to give my overview of where I've been over the last 20 years.
Thank you. Thank you. One follow-up question that I'll leave here for you to address, Bill, really is, how do you identify and practice those spaces that connect founders, technology, regulation? What's your work process? Yeah, and what works really to find that sweet spot? But you mentioned 2 things that I believe are fundamental for our discussion, and that will be, one is this one of anticipating. So you saw an opportunity before others really, and maybe some of the elements were not even in place, right? And so anticipating, it's a critical thing. And this whole thing about connecting different elements. So thanks for that, Bill. I'll be back to you really to explore how you do that. What's your secret sauce? Ken, I would like to turn to you because you come from a different perspective. You are a university leader, driving engagement with the industry. Monash is present not just in Australia, but you have campuses in different countries. And you are running innovation activities, not just in Australia, but in other countries, and connecting, let's say, those perspectives. And in addition to that, and I follow you on social media, and when we've been in contact, I think that we bring this very important aspect about diversity and inclusiveness in the innovation space. So if you could share a bit about what you do, how you do that, it would be wonderful.
Thank you, and thank you to the panel and for everyone who's listening tonight. Tonight, all over the world. I'm the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Enterprise, and the enterprising goal of Monash is to ensure that there are no barriers to enable things that can be discovered and translated inside the university to get to the end goal, which is to make a difference to either society or to people's lives. And if you think back over the narrative around universities over many, many years, historically, they were seen as very insular places where people went to do things and they stayed within their communities, whereas now they are mass hyper translation areas. And the only way that works is by narrowing the gap between what happens inside a university and what happens outside the university. So my role is to work across the university and look at not only how can we be easier to collaborate inside the university, but also how can we build bridges outside. And as you said, Roberto, if you think about Monash, Monash is Australia's largest university, but it's also a very diverse international university. So it's got, as well as having its campuses in Australia, it's also got a campus in India, in China, are based in Italy, a full campus in Malaysia, and we've just in the process of opening a campus in Indonesia as well. And what that gives us a genuine opportunity is to not only think through the lens of what can innovation do for the Australian economy, but also what can the collective mindset of sharing ideas. And I was really interested in what Hero said about the difference between invention and innovation. And different countries, different people, different disciplines have all got very different perspectives. And what we can do, both inside the university and through the partnerships that we've got, is build really interesting interdisciplinary, inter-organizational teams, which can enable us to focus on how we pull through innovation through the system to make sure it gets to the end user. The other thing I would say is that it's not just about the side of research and research translation. We've also got to remember that we want to instill the notion of innovation in the talent that we're going to push out into the economy as well. So we have got all of these graduates that are coming through. The way we educate them, not just pedagogically, but the actual topics we choose to educate them on, the exposure we give them to the challenges of society are really, really important. We want to send them out into society as responsible, accountable people who have an interest in making a difference, not only to themselves, but also to the organizations they're in. And the final thing I'll say by way of introduction is the motto of the university is a phrase which is ancora imparo, which means I am still learning. And that is the thing, that's not only about what the university is, but it's also the message we give to everyone who connects to the university. Nothing is settled, nothing is in a fixed state. And our job is to make sure that we continually examine and re-examine the issues facing the world, facing society, and do what we can to address them.
Thank you, Ken. A very quick follow-up question here for you. Does your industry engagement cover all countries where you are present or Monash is present?
So we have people in each of the countries that get to know the economies and the areas that are there. But my area is responsible for pulling across those different national and international boundaries. So I'll give you one very quick example that we have a commercialization area within what we do within Australia. And a couple of years ago, we set up a branch on how we could do that in China. And we've been working very collaboratively with the Malaysia branch as well, which is how do we connect the commercialization, product development, service development, not only from Australia to Malaysia, Australia to China, Australia to India, but in both directions. And that gives us an opportunity to contribute to trade agreements and other ideas that are coming between different countries.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great, Ken. We have other colleagues joining us here. Olá, my friends and colleagues in Brazil. So I just said one word in Portuguese. Great to see you, CS, joining us from Malaysia. And we're just having comments about the engagement that some of colleagues have with Monash in Malaysia here, Ken. So great. Gada, I want to turn to you to have your corporate perspective. And you are the head of the Omnipreneurship Lab. I personally believe that's an amazing, fantastic concept. So if you could maybe, as a way of introduction, share a bit about omnipreneurship and what you are doing and how you are driving innovation, sustainability, and resilience in the Aldaba Group. Over to you, Gada. Gada, can you hear us? You are muted.
Sorry. Yes. First of all, I would like to, thank you for the invitation and to be amongst, this wonderful panel. Yes, you suggested, I'm head of the Omnipreneurship Lab at the Aldaba Group. And the Aldaba Group ecosystem, which is composed of 60 plus businesses operating in different industries, in very diverse in terms of size and maturity and and the operations. And this ecosystem is governed by the omnipreneurship business model, which is an approach that includes the 3 principles of giving, earning, and sustaining, 5 core values, and 10 golden rules. The Bar Group has launched a 2025 strategy focused on achieving a target across these 3 principles that are fueled by omnipreneurship, which allows us to move forward towards our goal. So the 3 principles, which is giving, which is principally in the form of philanthropy, fundamental to our business approach. Giving equals earning. For each dollar distributed as dividend, another is allocated for philanthropy. The earning bit, we earn so that we can give. We give great attention to sustaining earning so that we can continue to give. And sustaining, we want this to continue. So the concept of sustaining is vital in making this model work for the long term. Now, the mission of the OmniLab is to design, orchestrate, govern, and implement corporate transformation, innovation, and sustainability programs within the diversified business entities within Al-Dabagh Group. And the goal is to make the transformation economically rewarding, organically scalable, and long-term sustainable by adhering to the following guidelines. So the first of which is think, do, and be the best in class, world in class. And this is by implementing the golden rule of imagine best, the next big thing, and the greatest among you. Second of which is scale cost effectively and efficiently to power profitable, sustainable growth, depending on the golden rules of design organically and honey is money. And then recapitalizing learning assets across businesses, which depends on collaborate to accelerate. And finally, smart, no excuse execution driven by high performance team, digital tools, and best class processes, depending on the exceptional execution. Now, the OmniLab has 4 mandates, which are quite related and intertwined by and governed by innovation and sustainability. The first of which is to design, orchestrate, and drive corporate transformation across BUs, create new business models and Imagineer service innovation, leveraging on data and transformative consumer experiences, scout new technologies through global innovation ecosystems, and empower BUs with new tools, frameworks, and platforms. And then build innovation and sustainability as a way of doing business. So that was basically the, who is the OmniLab and what, the principles, the business model that we rely on. So the key objective is to identify, encourage of the lab is to identify and encourage and highlight innovation and sustainability across all BUs according to ADG's omnipreneurship values and principles. And again, now to describe what is needed, I mean, what we've developed as a framework to ensure that we achieve exceptional execution of and achieve our goals, we've identified and created 5 pillars to do this. And the first of which is the digital roadmap, which is a critical need to develop a 3 to 5 year plan to orchestrate all the digital initiatives going forward. The second pillar is something we called, a unit we called a digital control tower. And this is an urgent need to control the digital initiative delivery. And this is grounded in the enterprise architecture that we've developed, governing, all the shared by all the business units. The third is the Strategy and Digital Project Management Office, which is responsible for managing the strategic and digital initiatives. And this requires a very strong project management office. And this is provided as a service to all the business units, a service of people, processes, and tools to strategy and digital leads at the different business units. The fourth pillar is the Digital Delivery Center, which consists of our project managers, architects, subject matter experts, and sourcing hub. And the fifth pillar is the Innovation and Sustainability Office, which identifies key areas of innovation and sustainability and explores partnerships with external innovation stakeholders, as well as identify related projects for innovation scouting. So we've just described again the what is needed to achieve hopefully our objectives. And the how is basically the different, the methodology and the functionalities that these different pillars or different offices are responsible for. And they're basically, again, we're just listing here, a few. This basically, every, let's say, point or every function is crucial. And it's an integrated approach so that to ensure the successful achievement of our goals. First of all, which we're responsible for to provide intellectual property portfolio analysis, identify relevant IP analysis tools, and this is done by the strategy office as an example. We also analyze industry trend reports, technology trend reports, industry insights, introduction of new technologies and new products, partner with consulting firm, and this is through supporting of due diligence, technology and financial, build up of pro forma financial plans and investment analysis of new initiatives, identify proper strategy tools. Again, this is done by the strategy. And if you could see, this is again stems from aligning all the activities that are run by the businesses, aligning them to the 2025 strategy so that cumulatively we can ensure that we achieve our goals. And another point is to exploit BU innovation ideas through the ecosystem and the activities that we've created at ADG, such as the Forward Thinking Awards, which is a competition or awards, a series of awards that are targeting internal employees. And this is to try and accelerate innovation to happen from within through the Forward Thinking Award. And then we would have the Grand Challenge Awards, which are awards targeting the external, people, the external world to address issues or challenges that our different business units are facing. And then we have our ADG portal, ADG innovation competition. Again, these are all, as I said, different activities that are available to enhance and accelerate innovation within the business units, within our ecosystem.
That's great. That was a blast, Gada. So thank you so much for sharing that. And in my mind, I think that was a way of synthesizing what you said. So you have an intellectual framework, guiding principles, and a guiding concept. But you also mentioned like 5 concrete solutions in terms of corporate architecture, 5 different offices that you have in place. Someone who's in charge of digital road mapping for the whole group, the digital control tower, project management office focused on strategy and digital implementation across the group, a digital delivery center, and this whole office about innovation and sustainability that does scouting, maybe some foresight. And the third component, you just laid out a series of initiatives, and we'll be back to those in as we continue the conversation. So thank you so much for that. And Gada, it would be great, maybe whatever resources you have that explain that architecture that we could share with our colleagues here, because you just gave amazing examples on the how, and we'll be back to that. So thanks for sharing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Jaime, let's switch a bit to the conversation and turn to you. You are working in the policy space now, right? Doing foresight, heading foresight for a national government agency, really trying to see what's next in terms of innovation, and from there trying to in some way make concrete things come up. I think that we heard from different colleagues here about institutions and trying to see what's next. What are the opportunities? Could you share with us what do you do and how do you do that in practice, and maybe connecting sustainability and innovation at more like the policy national level?
Sure. Thanks again for having me here. First of all, the council where I work, the National Council of Innovation for Development, was born out of a concern for the future. Chile is the main copper concentrate producer of the world. This is a tiny country that produces 30% of the copper concentrate of the world, which is crucial for example, electrification of the transport industry and many other things. And the question that Chile had in 2005 was, what if the copper is made obsolete? Which is something that happened before in Chilean history with saltpeter, sodium nitrate, at the beginning of the 20th century. Chile was a relatively rich country, and then the artificial saltpeter was invented, and the economy crashed. And then the 1929 crisis came, and then it was a disaster. So this concern that made the government at the time say, well, we need to transform our economy and innovate and bring technology and become a country that earns its income through knowledge and not just natural resources, which is a common problem around the world. We're not unique. So this council was founded in order to advise the president of the republic in order what to do with a long-term view. And that's where the future comes again into the equation. And with our first approach during the first 4 or 5 years was to an economic-centric approach, like looking at state failures and market failures and see, well, how does innovation roadblocks, we can lift those roadblocks looking from that perspective. And some very strong policies came from there, looking at, for example, the formation of university professors and scholarships and big research centers, and that have been very successful. I mean, in the past 15 years, those things have grown a lot. But still, and we have this problem still, it's a really hard thing how to come from the research and from the knowledge in order to value creation. And all of you have mentioned this before. And so then in the framework about to think about the future, we started looking at how the future is being created, not just how the levers are being applied, and what are the global conversations that are shaping the future. And not just looking at trends, but what are the interests and the concerns that are driving those trends. For example, energy. I mean, the energy sector, it's not just because the solar panels are getting cheaper. They're getting cheaper because people are talking about the need for renewable energy. So they're investing in renewable technology and things like that. And after that, and another set of policies came out of there, like, for example, the Grand Challenges initiatives are similar to Grand Challenges initiatives. And nowadays, we are looking into how the different organizations, public and private organizations, think about the future. Why is that? Because you can agree that, for example, we need a sustainable future. We need a sustainable productive matrix. But the way you understand how that future is going to play out sometimes are incompatible between each other. So you think you have to import some technology, another person says, well, no, we just need to preserve the forests. And it's the same concern. You probably think about a similar future, but the way you think about it give you different paths that clash between each other. So now, and that's my job right now, is to help the conversation within the country, within the organizations. How do we help people to understand how they're looking into the future, and what are the main concerns that are behind that outlook, and lay out the basic, lay the basic ground in order to build a collective view about that future that we are in general in agreement, and not let the subtleties hamper that agreement, that it's crucial in order to build a long-term plan or a long-term initiative. So that's it.
Thank you, Jaime. So just, we need to be intentional about building the future. That's the message that I take, but we need to understand the different views that are in play when we do that, right? So really understanding how different stakeholders and putting them together, it's a critical topic. So thanks for highlighting that, and I'll be back to you about the how. A few things here. I saw many comments and also some questions, and we will start to address those. But we also have a quick poll here that we want to put for everybody to contribute to the conversation. And it's maybe Vanessa Simoni, if we could put that on. We have a quick poll on the main focus areas for us to really to drive innovation. So we just want to get inputs from everybody. So maybe here are a few things that will be defining in innovation until 2030. So let's see what colleagues can really vote, and let's see what comes up. Maybe we have like 15, 20 seconds more. Are we done with the poll? Can we finalize that?
Yes, for some reason it's not working for me.
Oh, I got the same here, that host and panelists can't vote. So someone has prohibited us from voting. It says
5 seconds more. Who have not voted?
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Yep. Can you pull the results? Okay. So I think most of people think that AI is a future defining topic, that probably the most relevant. The other one, let's say, in some way, clean tech and innovation democratization also are very high into that. So AI is your area, Gada. So we've been researching and developing technologies. So I think we'll have a chance to talk more about those different topics. And we have different questions here. We'll turn to that. But Hiro, I want to be back to you and maybe hear about the cases that you comment, or the projects that were leading the 5 countries, and also your reflections on what you heard from all of our colleagues here, and what works in practice. How can we drive this agenda, Hiro?
Yes, Roberto, thank you very much. Actually, I would like to ask a question to Bill, and if I may. And you mentioned that most of the invention don't go to market, and there is a clearly difference between invention and the customer experiences or market. And so there is actually clear distinction between two elements. And as a venture capitalist in 20 years, what was the biggest challenge, in fact, you have observed in terms of value creation in the market and invention? And I have a few ideas, but I'd like to hear, if you will, I'd like to hear your ideas, and then I'd like to build upon your perhaps answers, if I may.
Sure. So over to you, Bill. And if we could bundle a question that we also get here, Bill. So Rick is asking about energy innovation and the relationship with traditional resources like coal and oil. and the whole thing about regulatory frameworks. Yeah. So the question is, how can we update regulatory frameworks to be more conducive to partnerships and to drive innovation in the energy space? Maybe we could bundle those two things. Over to you, Bill.
No, happy to do so. And in regard to Hiro's question regarding how, what are the central challenges to get into an innovation that really is going to be transformative, that will not only get to scale, but also be transformative to an industry. One of the things that we've looked at over the years is how the behavior of a team operates within the context of the challenge. So I'll cite an example. So our first investment in early 2000s was a company did something called demand response, which means when you are a user of energy, which all of us are, of course, you either curtail that use or you self-generate at that point. So you're drawing less from a central source. So that's the concept of demand response. In the United States, there was really no regulatory framework at that time for doing this. In fact, US electric utilities were negative on it because even though they thought that it made sense, they couldn't get comfortable that it would be reliable enough to do this. So a few groups got into it, but one group in particular in the Boston area called Enernoc was two entrepreneurs who wrote a paper about this in grad school. And then they set out to raise some money. So we were part of an early group that led a small round of capital to go into this company. And what they did is they didn't create a lot of new technology. This was a business model innovation. But what they did is they worked initially locally in the Northeastern United States to help change the regulatory framework by basically going to the state and local authorities and saying, look, we've got some needs in various communities where there's congestion on the grid, prices are high. If we can implement demand side measures, including having the backup generators available to be used in connection with grid management, to be able to implement curtailment reductions by putting energy or making sure energy can be used at specific times, we can create a lot more value and spare you the investment in these very expensive assets that are only used a few times a year when there's peak needs for energy. So they were able to achieve that goal, but they had to work with state and local authorities, and it was quite a feat for them to do that. Once they got it rolling, the process continued to grow and grow and grow, and then ultimately they became a national company and ultimately an international company providing demand response services. And today they're actually owned by or became part of NLX, the Italian energy company. So that is an example where you had a good idea. It wasn't necessarily completely new in concept, but it was difficult to implement. And this became kind of an innovation on how to restructure the regulations along with the proper economic incentives, which they also had to help develop, so that this industry would become an important part of the energy management, energy management industry. I mean, today it's a demand response, or DR as they call it, is completely global. It's everywhere. That would be citing example. Another example that is in a different area would be in transportation. So as the EV movement was getting underway, although it really started many years ago, but in terms of picking up with the startup of Tesla, there were a lot of things that were going to make it so that Tesla wouldn't get there, such as the automotive industry as a whole was very large and powerful, controlled the supply chain and everything else. However, if you could put the necessary pieces in place, and in this case, it did rely heavily on getting some government funding initially, you could begin to build the support and infrastructure for electric vehicles. We made an investment in a company at the time that was very fledgling called ChargePoint. ChargePoint today is one of the largest EV charging companies on the planet. And what helped make them successful, in addition to legislation that was being passed at the state level and at the federal level to some degree, was the ability to say, look, we need to make our transportation cleaner, and we need to have an ability to move this market to such a point that the infrastructure will be there. Well, ChargePoint took advantage of that early notion that you have to have something that's super customer friendly, that is going to be channeled to the demographic of people that will initially want to use EVs, which quite frankly was people in the upper income strata, because EVs were quite expensive in the earlier days, now not so much. Excuse me, but you needed to work with the utilities, you needed to work with state regulatory authorities, the powers that be that will want to support this growing but still very nascent industry. So we made investment thinking that, well, the Teslas of the world and certain other groups will eventually pick up some track, but we felt that we needed to know that at least there was constituencies within certain states like California where they would support this. And of course, today it's now the transformative area of transportation is the electrification of transportation. But that did involve developing a very user-friendly, affordable customer policies, and having the various regulatory and incentives being put in place to help bolster it so that it could go from being a cottage industry into a major industry it is today. I don't know, did I answer that right, Hiro?
Yeah, Bill, thank you very much. Amazing. And Robert, if I may, I would like to add a few comments on top of Bill's comment, and then I will pass it back to you. I think actually what Bill has just touched upon was actually a very important message, because innovation cannot be done by ourselves. We have to engage many stakeholders. And in fact, invention itself does not achieve, frankly, expected result. Actually, invention multiplied by perhaps stakeholder engagement and so business model, and also willingness to change. And all those components has to be kind of packaged as a business model really to deliver the results. And in fact, Japan Innovation Network and UNDP have been working together for the past 5 years, since 2016, by establishing a new open innovation platform, which is called Sdgs, Holistic Innovation Platform. We call it as SHIP. So it is literally a ship, because we have to go through the very tough journey. So we need a ship kind of, but the reason we decided to team up with the UNDP was because of their convening power to engage many stakeholders, public, civil society, and private sector and academic. So we need all powers to make fundamental changes into the market. And unfortunately, I would say private sector alone cannot achieve such a societal huge fundamental change. So that's why we decided to work with the United Nations directly. And so I think actually what Bill has just shared with us is resonate with what we've been going through for the past 5 years. Again, we need the stakeholders, and we need a willingness to change. And the worst scenario is that we have all stakeholders. However, there is no will to change. That's a worst case scenario. And also we need a business case. And so I think back to you, Roberto.
Thank you, Hiro, and you, Bill, because I think that you really made the case for this innovation as a social process. So you need to engage across several dimensions and with the different stakeholders. So I think that's a very important message. Hiro, a quick follow-up question. If you could share a bit more about the mechanics of the innovation accelerator and the projects that you are involved with. How do they work?
Okay. Again, UNDP has so-called accelerator labs in about 90 locations around the globe, mostly in developing countries. And actually, the headquarters has asked for proposal to all countries and asking and depending on the situations. And so we and from Japan side, the cabinet office provided some funding to go through that so-called challenge. And so actually they have identified, UNDP has identified 5 labs in India, Philippines, Vietnam, and Turkey, and Malawi. And so they came back to us with a particular, I would say, pain points they would like to solve. Then we went back to Japan, then we asked for solutions, okay? Then, we have selected certain private sector company, then they met, then we decided to design the process to, number one, to create a business model, then to validate the business model. So this is not a matchmaking process. This is not an implementation process. This is a business model creation and validation process. And to do so, we need a framework. We need a common framework to work together because that was the first time for everybody to work together. So we used ISO standard, ISO 56002, because it has defined a very clear innovation process as a common language for everybody. And it is not a secret source anymore. It's an open source, literally, for everybody. And so we are using the common framework to work together. And we are still in the middle of the project. I think so. We don't know the result yet, but again, this is a very exciting project because again, in doing so, private sector is working. Let's say in India, for example, government agency and other agencies and blah blah blah. So all stakeholders engaged in the process, and we are working together as a team. So I stop here. Roberto, back to you.
Thank you so much, Hiro. And I want to further explore that. But also, maybe I could turn to you, Gada, because I think that different things that Bill and Hiro touched upon here, like having frameworks, exploring new business models, are things that you were doing at the Omnipreneurship Lab. So I would like to hear a bit from you about how you do that in practice and some of the things. But also we have 2 questions for you here, Gada. One really is about coming from our colleague and friend Walid Al-Somali from Saudi Arabia. It's what's the best framework and structure to elevate innovation to the next impact level in the kingdom? So going from the Aldaba group to the country, right? And what's the role of academia and the corporate world to do that? And it's hard to find someone best positioned than you to talk about those intersections. And the other question is from a colleague from Brazil, Adriano, who's asking about your corporate governance mechanisms, really to make digital transformation happen, yeah? And how do you deal with things like flexibility in the corporation, right? So over to you, Gada, maybe your comments about the 2 questions, but also how you experiment those new models and what are the frameworks to do that?
Correct. First of all, I would like to thank, both Bill and Hiro for their comments because, I see great value there. Simply, having the stakeholders, it's the implementing or adopting innovation is not, that simple. It requires a complete ecosystem of, stakeholders, acceptability, and for a business model. So it's multifactorial. From my personal experience at the ADG, I think that again having the business model of omnipreneurship helps because the businesses. I think innovation will only be utilized if it brings the business appreciate the value that the innovation will bring. to the business. So, I mean, I'm just going to be giving an example, a real live example from, from ADG, but one of our subsidiary. Now, because as I said, sustainability is one of the principles of omnipreneurship. So a business has to, again, when we identify sustainability initiatives, they have to actually feed into the earning, meaning that it should create value for the business. So one of our subsidiary businesses, for example, it's a poultry farm. And these poultry farms, they generate a lot of waste, solid and liquid waste. And so what we did, we evaluated, again, from an earning perspective, we evaluated the value stream, and we identified that actually one of the, let's say, very high cost for running this business is actually importing wooden shavings. So these wooden shavings are used in the beds of the chickens to simply absorb moisture and reduce infections. So again, from a perspective of bringing in value and reducing cost, okay, innovation was used whereby we went and we planted 100,000 trees. We took the wastewater and waste solid, and we recycled. So we irrigated the trees by the wastewater, and we fertilized the trees by the solid waste. And we created a circular economy whereby then these trees will be, shredded, and then we utilize, in the beds. And we managed to cut the cost of course, of importing, and we used to pay company to go and to get rid of the both solid and liquid waste. So what I'm trying to say here is that to ensure sustainable, let's say, utilization of innovation, and while at the same time adhering to sustainability, to the SDGs, I think that the initiatives, they have to bring great value to the business. So in this example, we managed, to reduce, to save a lot of cost, and at the same time, we managed, I think, the area where the plants were planted, I think, plus there was a -5 degree reduction, in the temperature in that area. So again, I think the key is, of course, having multiple stakeholders involved and all of that. But again, all these innovation-led initiatives or sustainable-led initiatives, they have to bring clear value to the business, so that they, again, on the ground, it will be adopted by the businesses. And going back to the two questions, I'm going to be utilizing the same answer that Mr. Hero gave, which is that we need to create an ecosystem, local ecosystem in Saudi Arabia, composed of different incubators, plus government entities, industry, and universities, bring all these together and create a very healthy ecosystem that we could collaborate. And GFCC is one of these forums where we could, exchange ideas and benefit from each other's experiences. So I think creation of these ecosystem is crucial. That's my comments.
Am I right to understand, in relation to the first part of her comment, Gada, that so two ideas came to my mind. One is that you always need to think about the business case, right? So and the other idea is that you mentioned different management tools, value mapping, technology, whatever, but the overarching thing was the design principle, sustainability. So coupling this design principle with the other notion that the business case always needs to be present. Is that the secret for you?
Correct. Yes. And I think another secret is the alignment, meaning having the different departments, they shouldn't work in silos. There should be some kind of integration or alignment so that so that the ship moves in the same direction. If there's no alignment, you're going to find that, every department is going to be, moving in different. So creating the strategy at the beginning so that we create our true north. And then from, creating the true north, then we create an execution plan that will ensure, and this execution plan involves all the different stakeholders so that, we agree on the path that we will be taking so that cumulatively we'll be going, all of us, the ship will be going in one direction, the same direction, which is, the strategy, what was identified by the strategy.
Yeah. Wonderful. I want to turn to you, Ken, because this really connects to what you said before, right? Breaking the barriers, right? So, and I think that we also heard about different things here, how challenges, business acceleration, things that you are driving. So how can you at the same time break the barriers and drive future building? What could you share about how you are doing that, Ken?
Okay. No, it's good. It's been really interesting listening to the different perspectives. And I think back about conversations I was involved in innovation about a decade ago, and I think about it now. And about a decade ago, when people were looking at the translation, wherever it was invented, they were looking at the translation. It was almost like it was a linear process, and there were different agents at different ends of the line. And it was often portrayed that universities were on one side of the line and investors were closer to the customer. And actually what's happened is this has become a much more dynamic process. When we look at ourselves as a university, we're not only a place of research, but we also have 87,000 students and we have 500,000 graduates. So we're as close to the customer as an inventor because we've actually got access to the perspectives of people. So I think the whole innovation process isn't linear, it's more dynamic and it's more deliberate. And I think it's on all of us to get closer, not further away on the line. Universities are doing more to bring their inventions further out. So with Melbourne University, Monash and Melbourne created a company called BioCurate, which was to take pharmaceutical developments from both universities and bring them further out into the investment pipeline. But what we've needed is to see investors come a bit further back. We've taken some of the risk as a university working with the government, and what we need are some of the investors to come back. But a really practical example, Roberto, I mentioned in one of our conversations, the Victorian Heart Hospital, which is being built on the Monash University campus at the moment. On the one hand, it's a state-funded, part university-funded hospital, cardiac specialist hospital, which is being put there. And that could have just simply been commissioned by government with some cardiac clinicians and then put onto the campus. What's actually happened in practice is it's got customer insight, it's got investor insight, we have industry as part of it, we've got obviously research as part of it. So what we're developing with the Victorian government is a pathway to improved healthcare. And it's not that it's just a one intervention through a physical hospital. We're actually actively working on the roots of innovation, which then leads to better cardiac care on the other side. The other aspect of it is you talked around inclusion. I've said in another forum that one of the single largest killers of women in the world is a failure to understand how cardiac healthcare affects women. So this hospital has a very clear, determined drive, which is it's going to improve health outcomes for women, health and cardiac outcomes for women. It's also got a real focus on Indigenous health. So the whole issue of First Nations people and increasing the health outcomes for there. They've been hard coded into this from the beginning. So when we're talking to our researchers, when we're talking to our clinicians, when we're talking to our industry partners, this is a collective effort to those outcomes. The key thing from my perspective is that none of this will happen by accident. So just simply building a hospital and then putting some clinicians in and then introducing them to researchers and hoping they interact with patients that is not going to lead to an accelerated improvement in women's cardiac care, indigenous cardiac care. You have to code it in at the beginning. So I think what I've heard it from the others as well. These old models of linear thinking, where you almost do a bit of innovation, a bit of invention, you test your innovation, you pass it along the pipe, someone else picks it in, they trust it a little bit more, throw some money in, pull it along, etc. This is a much closer, more iterative process. And just going back to that point about the energy, I was talking about to one of the energy regulators in Australia last year. And one of the things that she said was, consumers are driving the changing pace of energy much more than government, that consumers are demanding the changes and pulling the policies through with a much greater appetite than the majority of governments. So what we are seeing in some markets is the consumer is the disruptor. It's not the inventor that it's the disruptor, it's the demands of the consumer that's actually leading to things changing on the ground.
So a quick follow-up here, Ken. What's the missing link for you to further advance? You mentioned, hey, we want to bring investment, we want to connect with investors. So what's the missing link? We have a venture capitalist here, by the way.
Here's my missing link, because I say this all the time. So when I sit with inventors inside the university, I think, again, go back 10 years, people used to come up and say, I've invented this, now let's go find the people who want to deal with it. We've turned that on its head. We now say, if your invention was the answer, well, what was the question? And actually, increasingly, we're attaching them to the question so that they're attaching their inventions to genuine need. So genuine market need, genuine customer need. And obviously, we're still supporting fundamental invention because we need to have a long pipeline. The thing that's missing for me is I don't think people check in on their own prejudices and attitudes about other people in the ecosystem. I hear banal generalizations about investors, about customers. I hear it about inventors. I hear it about universities. And all of us have gone through really cyclical revolutionary change over the last 5 years, in particular with the rate of change in technology. So all I would say is, wherever you are in that innovation cycle, whether you are an investor, whether you're at the sharp end of the market, whether you think you're an interface with the government, either government or customer, or you're a venture capitalist, I think really rethink what you think about other players in that ecosystem. Because I just hear a lot of generalizations. I hear universities are very internal. I hear that venture capitalists are never willing to take any risk. I hear, there's just all of these things, and they get repeated and repeated and repeated. If I could just make one change, it would just be that people were more open-minded, that other players in the ecosystem have moved a little bit further than maybe they think.
Well, let's get rid of the stereotypes. I think that's how I hear you. Jaime, over to you, because this really connects to what you said before, sharing different views, but also in some way developing a deep understanding of things and not just having like generalizations. So how can we drive this innovation needle and sustainable innovation needle in practice? What's coming up in Chile? What are you seeing?
Well, first of all, about what Ken was saying, the immense complexity about the innovation ecosystems in countries, and that runs deep, really deep. And what he was mentioning about the assumptions people make, it's crucial, because that's one of the main barriers to changing how things are done, because it's a network, a chain of assumptions that are linked together and that they self-reproduce. And that's also important for thinking about the future. Those assumptions make you think of some futures and makes you blind to other possible emergent futures. Having said that, what we are doing now, and we're in the process of drafting a new national strategy for innovation, is to bring all these concepts into a view of a national ecosystem for innovation, and bringing in some conversations about how to give some direction to that ecosystem without a prescriptive instruction. You know, I mean, for example, Chile, and we share that with Japan and the West Coast in the US. We have a lot of earthquakes. So we've learned a lot about resilient construction and urban design. Still a long way to go, but we have a lot of experience in that. So what we're doing, for example, is to bring all this knowledge and experience together from the academy, from the universities, from the government, from the private companies. And we are setting up for Chile a new kind of research center that it's not just in charge of doing research, but in charge of articulating distributed initiatives for building the next phase of urban design and construction and social organization for natural disaster, for building community resilience through natural disasters. And of course, that includes social scientists, artists, in order to understand how communities self-organize in the wake of a disaster. That's the sort of things that we're bringing into the national conversation or pushing, and that's one thing. Another thing, for example, is to Chile is one of the countries. Well, it's the country that's closer to Antarctica, so we're also articulating a world-class center for Antarctic research. It's not only going to have academics, it's going to have a whole world-class architectural design for a building that it's the closest to Antarctica that anybody else can be. And that's we want to be a leading partner for climate change research, because the Antarctica is the last piece of the world that is untouched, it's undeveloped. So the measurements and the observations we can make close to Antarctica are the cleanest ones that we have in the world today. So it's not that the council is in charge of those projects, but we are articulating in a high level with the government and the industry and the academia how to approach those global challenges, taking advantage of the things that Chile can lead. So sorry, I don't know if I answered the question. Sorry, just say.
No, but and I have a quick follow-up, and I know that you, Hiro, you have a comment or a question for Jaime too, right? Would you like to share that, Hiro?
Oh, no. It's more like personal. But Jaime, actually, I'm the president of Japan Disaster Risk Reduction Platform in Japan, and I do work with many stakeholders globally and locally. So maybe we should catch up with the earthquake issues if you are interested later.
Definitely. I was the executive coordinator of the commission that gave rise to this center that I was mentioning. So we have a lot to talk about.
Okay. Wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
We just make another connection. We have 9 minutes to finish and wrap our session here. So maybe we could go for a very quick round here. And I want to ask you about, let's say, what's the secret for the things that work in practice that you are doing? Gada, how can you really, this is a very complex corporate infrastructure that you are dealing with. Management model, different pieces and parts. What's needed to make that work? How do you select the people that will make things happen? How do you promote those? So what's your secret in practice? And maybe Bill, how do you pinpoint something that will really flourish and scale up? Yeah. So what have you seen are the things that really work? Maybe I want to turn to you for quick reactions on those. And I have a question for you, Bill, here about the potential for geothermal power generation, very specific. But maybe we could get started with you, Bill, and then I'll turn to you, Gada. So how do you pinpoint the things that will really will have traction?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, there are a number of factors, but if I were to break them down into the top, number one, of course, is how big is the problem and how elegant is the solution that a prospective company is going to address. And then really, I mean, this is kind of the venture mantra that, it's a way of thinking is that you need to have a culture of people, even at the beginning, who are thinking in my view, in terms of being lean and basically very resourceful. So while there are a lot of people who are capable in the world of solving problems, the question is how do you build the business from inception that's early stage, because I'm an early stage venture investor, that can take that problem and then convince enough people, enough constituencies, and of course, ultimately the customer, that this is really going to be valuable. And the type of individuals that you need to do that have to be thinking all the time about where it is that they're going to get traction and what the various steps they need to ultimately get the kind of traction they're looking for. So that's kind of a broad strokes way of saying that implementation and scalability are among the greatest challenges of any company, particularly in things that are related to infrastructure and policy like energy. So the formula that works is one where you can see a fairly clear path to a business financial reward solution, but you have to be able to figure out who you're going to likely partner with and what it's going to take over some period of time. And usually for us, it's hopefully no longer than 7-8 years, but to ultimately get to a point where you're really scaled. But the biggest challenge in the energy innovation space is about getting to scale. And so that's why you need multiple parties. But the secret is finding mostly the right people. Assuming you believe the technology is sound, the market is large, it really does come down to the people. It may be the great secret is people invest in people, and there are only so many people that are really, really resourceful at starting things from scratch. It's a completely different talent than being, a general manager of a large company, which has its own complexities and but it's a different skill set. And so that is really the formula for success. And that's why I hear people writing books about, startups and what it takes. It takes a certain kind of individual to make it happen and then build the right team. And we're very concerned from the get-go about building that team that understands enough and then bringing in the other, the additional talent as you grow.
And quick comment, 30 seconds, geothermal. What are the prospects for geothermal power?
Well, I think there's some very good prospects for it. We haven't invested in it directly because we felt it was more for developers than for venture capitalists. We do see some opportunities occasionally to improve geothermal power through material science, through systems that help manage the brine that's often, depending on what type of geothermal system you're looking at, but I'm thinking of a large geothermal system producing power. But I think geothermal energy it is very site specific, and so it's not a global solution, but it is a very helpful one. And I think there are a number of resources around the world where it could be better utilized. It's clearly been some ups and downs, and some of it initially got started, at least in the U.S., with a lot of tax incentives and all sorts of the things that happened 20 plus years ago. But today, I think it's kind of, with the issue of climate change and the fact that from the studies I've read that it can be very competitive, I think it has a significant future.
Thank you. Got a very quick comment here on how do you do this? How do you address the people challenge and to make things happen in practice, as Bill said? How do you do that at the Aldebaran Group?
Okay, well, I agree. With the Bill 100%, because again, you could build a business case. It all at the end comes down to the people. So having the right people with the right skill set and who are willing to go the extra mile because in my personal opinion, one of the most important factors that are actually will gear which, direction, whether, we succeed or fail, is actually change management and the culture. So you can have a brilliant business case and you can prove, that the value of the direction. However, if you do not spend enough time in communicating and engaging with the business, so that you gradually embed, let's say, the idea for them to accept and acknowledge, so that you work together, I think it's going to be very difficult. So having a team, identifying people who are willing to go the extra mile in terms of communicating with the business. Of course, it's a balancing act, because sometimes you need enforcement from management so that it happens. But however, if the let's say the business themselves they don't adopt and accept the direction they're moving in, it will be very difficult to accelerate. So again, I think it's a balancing act. Spend enough time with the business so that you could transform the culture and transform the again, speaking and engaging with the business, so that you could have them, let's say, to adopt your ideas, as well as managing, again, having a mandate, or support from upper management. And again, find people with resilience and people skills, and again, having the extra willingness to do more, because again, it's I think we're facing challenges. I mean, down on the first floor, on the ground floor, you're going to find that we have multiple challenges, and being resilient and adaptive is, in my personal opinion, one of the most important criterias we look at.
Thank you, Ghada. Well, we have reached the top of the hour here, but really, I want to give you for a final round, starting with you, Ken, and I want to invite each one of you to comment about what's the one problem or one challenge that you think it would be worth for the GFCC to focus on, maybe to catalyze innovation, in your final comments. But also, starting with you, Ken, we got a question from our colleague Saurabh from Texas A&M about how do you focus on early stage funding, and how do you identify what's needed before a VC join? So if you could comment, and this is our final round.
Yeah, no, really quickly, on the early stage stuff, we've had to go further out than maybe universities would have done traditionally, and that's what most universities are doing now. I think there's a really important role for government. So the Victorian government's established a big thing called the Breakthrough Fund, which again is to create a big bridge so that we pull more innovation through. But it goes back to the point that Bill said before. We need to do more to introduce investors to our people, because that's what they're investing in. That is actually what they're investing in, the ability of these people to really take something and take it to scale. And the way in which we do that, and Alex Zubik, who's from RMIT University, who you'll know really well as well, he's the master of living laboratories and creates them for all of the things that he works on. And Monash has got a whole raft of living laboratories. Really good way of being able to show both industry, investors, government, who your people are, what they're doing, and how that goes. In terms of, I'm going to give you an example of a problem which you may find a bit of a surprise, but it's on my mind because of some work we were doing today. The amount of productivity that's lost in society through gender and family violence around the world is significant. If there was a way of being able to use technological solutions in a way which makes it easier to identify issues and changes in relationships that have happened, and the productivity effects of relationships that have happened, I think we would have a more inclusive society, but we'd also have a more productive society. So I'd like to see a focus on a real social issue like that, which is gender and family violence.
Thank you so much, Ken. Bill, over to you. A final comment and maybe one idea about something that we could solve for or try to?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that I would love to see happen, but if it came down to some broad, general way of sort of creating collaborations, it would be between the major corporations of the world and the institutional investors. To some extent, this may exist in some format. It wouldn't necessarily, well, ideally it could go through the UN, but I would really like to see how, you know, the large financial institutions and the large corporations can really come together in addressing, really addressing change for introducing innovation at a scale that will help address a lot of the greenhouse gas issues that we are falling short on right now. I think we do have a lot of I mean, we certainly have a lot of technology out there, but in terms of really thinking long term, which governments tend to do better than industry and investing organizations, if we could sort of bring that together in some collective body, maybe it's through the Paris Accord, but something bringing those two constituencies truly together that is going to be faster paced than what is currently happening right now. So it's my broad wish concept, but I think it's needed.
That's wonderful. Accelerate finance to boost innovation related to, let's say, cutting greenhouse gas. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Bill. Gada, over to you. And thank you so much for being here. A challenge, something that we could think about together.
Yes. Well, just, I mean, off the top of my head, something that's concerning me personally, agriculture and the use of, the pesticide and all of these is actually changing, has a negative effect on, health and the appearance of chronic diseases that are actually affecting and the health systems of different countries around the world. So how could we change change this? I mean, through policies, through so that we could create or stop, let's say, the production of products that has an adverse effect on health and lasting effects in health. So again, how could we change the agricultural system so that we could adopt new techniques or technologies so that we let's say address the appearance of chronic diseases from genetically modified products and all of these things. That's again something that I think that is going to all of the world is facing in terms of health crises.
Wonderful examples you brought to the conversation today, Gada. Thank you so much, and for this idea, sustainable, healthy food agriculture. We'll be in touch about it. Jaime, over to you. You mentioned different challenges, right, and different opportunities. So great to have you here. We would love very much to have Chile as part of our global conversation and initiatives. What's your idea?
Well, besides what I've already said, I mean, I agree with the Bill about the need for simplifying the view about clean growth. I mean, today environmental regulations are seen by many businesses and governments as roadblocks, as things that make things costlier. I mean, just and that hamper economic growth. But we are missing in the picture the emerging economy that it's behind that clean growth and renewable energies and all the biodiversity preservation that Professor Dasgupta from the UK, the Dasgupta report, he presented it here in Chile as well. That we have to come to balance the fear for hampering economic growth with the immense opportunities that come behind clean growth.
highlight opportunities about clean growth. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
And maybe Simone, if you could share, I think that people in attendance and everybody, we prepared a short discussion document that includes some ideas about that and information on clean opportunities and connections with innovation. If you could share, it would be great, Simone. Hiro, over to you. Final ideas, something that we could solve together or could work to try to solve as a community.
Okay, great. I think the fundamental nature of innovation activities is actually the fight against the existing system, particularly on the topics we talked about, because the existing system, in many ways, are based on assumption that the system should be run in a linear way. Okay, so this is a fight between non-linear activities and linear activities. And obviously, linear activity has merit, of course, but also to create a real innovation, society level innovation, we have to go through the massive non-linear activities. Okay, and so what GFCC can do together is to encourage this non-linear activity in a systematic way. And I would say it's an innovation management system, but at a larger scale, global scale. And I think I happen to be on your board, so I think we have to work together very hard to make it happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Hiro. And just to finish our conversation here, Simone, and I think that has shared the document that I mentioned to all of you, but also I have 4 key takeaways here. One, it's that nothing will happen by chance. I think all of you comment about that. So being intentional and driving that and working to build this shared vision about the future, it's essential. The second thing is that innovation is a social process. So it's not just about technology, it's engaging with a variety of stakeholders from the very practical examples that you shared, Bill. So if you are driving future in things that are highly regulated, you need to engage in that conversation. You need to be active in that. The third thing, it's about design criteria. I think that we heard that you has been stressing that for quite some time in the GFCC. Thanks for that. You gave amazing examples, Gada, on how to use that in practice, right? To guide corporate decisions. And finally, people, right? How we nurture and select people who are really willing to take risks and be resilient. This was an amazing conversation. I want to remind everybody that this will be continued. We took notes on your ideas about things that we could solve together for work in terms of really focus areas, but also topics like the topics that we just heard you have highlighted about going from a linear to non-linear and encouraging that type of frameworks and thinking. But the Frame the Future series will continue. On July the 14th, we will be talking about talent and how we can weave those future defining elements in the talent component, but also how we could mobilize talent from around the globe to solve for problems. And so that's a critical issue that actually our chairman, Chad Holliday, has stressed, and that like the tone for the conversation on the 14th. We invite everybody to go to the Frame the Future website. It's pretty simple, framethefuture.dgfcc.org. We are also putting together a resource that will include the videos, the reports that were created, the video clips. So it will be accessible through that. So please check it out. And just to finish, we'll do something, we'll take a quick picture. So please turn on your cameras. It's a GFCC tradition. And please, Vanessa, Simone, Riley, let's turn the cameras on. We're taking a quick picture and sharing. Thank you so much for being in with us. Thank you, Vanessa, Simone, and Riley, for making this happen. Ken, Bill, Hiro, Gada, Jaime, I learned a lot. We had fun. We had great comments here. We will share the resources with everybody. we invite everybody. We suggest you save the chats. Ken, I hope we can continue to be in touch with your move to the UK. Congratulations for your new position as a university president. That's super exciting. And actually, just reminded what Gada said. And you told me about the other day, sustainable, the future of farming, and something that you'll be very involved with. We hope to continue to work together.
Thank you.
Everybody, it was great to have you here. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.